Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Let me check my sound before I say anything else, because I'm going to piss people off in this video. And I don't mean to piss people off, but sometimes when you say things people don't particularly like, it annoys the hell out of people. And yet, what you're saying is just relatively true, at least I think it is. One of my subscribers, man, I'm immensely sorry for not knowing your name in advance when I cut this video on. But there is this conversation that's taking place on the QAnon phenomena. And in fact, while I look for her name, okay, here we are. So Susie Dawson. All right, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to make this quick because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I think this is kind of I think this is rather insane, if I'm being honest. But there's an odd phenomena, and I'm going to call it a phenomena, where there's this thing on 4chan, I guess you can call it in the bowels of the internet, called QAnon. And there's been this debate back and forth on the legitimacy of QAnon. Now, some people that I like a lot, Susie Dawson, Katie Johnson, has written articles on this. Susie Dawson has put on a thread making the argument that QAnon is a psyop, that there's something more to the phenomena itself, this odd quasi-political religious thing that's been created that people kind of fall in line behind. Deanna, that's it. I'm sorry. Yeah, Deanna, on Twitter. I'm less suspicious than Susie Dawson. I don't think it's a psyop. I just think they're being scammed. I think it's that basic, that simple. I don't think there's a there to it. Is it possible that there are some intelligence agents that decided to get on 4chan and troll a bunch of people into getting them into this kind of religious, political belief of Donald Trump? Maybe. Is it worth it for a few thousand people? Maybe. I mean, the CIA created a Twitter in order to try to create some kind of foment of revolution in Cuba. That's actually real, by the way. Something that just came out within a few months. That came out that it was that the CIA, United States government, has something to do with it. So, is it possible? Yes, of course it's possible. Is it possible that QAnon, or whatever they want to call themselves, has this kind of insider information and is this kind of inside figure that has all of this data that he's bestowing upon his followers, morsels at a time, to which they have to divine what he's talking about? Maybe. There's all sorts of things that's possible. You know, I could jump off my roof and land in a pillow of leaves, you know, like they have in the comic books. But oftentimes you just land and break your back. I'm extraordinarily skeptical that this is anything other than somebody dicking around. And finding that he has a following, and because he has a following, continue to essentially put out stuff for the people who are following him. I went through Susie Dawson's post, and I'm going to put her post at the bottom as she makes her argument about the psyop potential of this. I'm skeptical. I'm extremely skeptical, and I'm skeptical not on the side that it's a psyop, meaning that people put thought and energy into to maneuvering people around. And she even makes this point that there's a correlation between the naming of QAnon and the naming of the intelligence agencies that was hunting for Edward Snowden, saying that that's an interesting and odd coincidence, that the guy will name himself QAnon, while at the same token, the organization that was hunting for Snowden had Q in the naming of it. Q is not the thing that first comes to mind. But when you get down to brass tacks, what does what this person says line up with the world? And if what the person is telling me, I have to warp in my head and say there's some four-dimensional chess game going on with Donald Trump battling the plutocrats or battling the deep state or whatever. But it takes me to warp myself around. And I remember when people, lefties, were warping themselves around Obama, trying to come up with reasons and justifications that Obama was murdering all these people with these drones, that he was protecting the bankers. And the first thing they said is, hey, he's doing God's work. and he's battling the way things are. And if you give him a second term, he is going to break the chains. And Obama is going to rip his shirt off, and his muscles are going to be exposed in the sun. And there's going to be water that's flowing over him. And he's going to battle the plutocrats firmly that his first year is over with. That never happened. That wasn't going to happen. Because the person who they were trying to make this argument for was not on their side. But yes, he was going to take their vote. And yes, he was going to thank them for whatever illusions and ideas that they had. And yes, he was going to nurse those illusions. Because those illusions helps them get elected. And it helps them keep support. And is what politicians do to nurse this idea of what you believe they are. If what he is saying is not lining up with reality, then what he is saying is bogus. And this idea of trying to find some way to invest yourself. I'm trying to be kind when I'm talking about this because I can understand where people are coming from. All of these edifices have let them down. The media has a particular disposition and is not necessarily giving them what they wanted from the standpoint of news and information. You have a Democratic Party that cheated outright, cheated in the open at the top and the height of their lungs, while at the same token trying to tell everybody that they're not being cheated at all. They outright lied. And not just outright lied, continued to lie, saying they were united at the point where everybody knew 15 million people left the party. It was so ridiculous and so absurd that the newsman ends up asking Tom Perez, look, let's be honest. Like, he's asking him this thing of, certainly you guys don't believe that you're actually united. Certainly there's a civil war in the party. Even the news saw it. You go to the Republican side, and these guys are screaming at the height of their lungs into every microphone that they can find that they are trying to lower the debt. They care about the debt. The debt is the only thing that matters. The debt matters more than even the human being. And yet, when you get a Republican administration in, they increase the debt by $9 trillion. Paul Ryan, guy who said he'd die on the Bible if somebody raised the debt by one red center, debt ceiling. Paul Ryan didn't die on anything. Paul Ryan raised it by $9 trillion. Paul Ryan was perfectly okay with raising for $9 trillion because Republicans don't care about the debt and Democrats don't care about the poor. I'm making this point that I understand that when all of these things let people down, that the people are looking for something. They just want something to be real. They just want something to be true. And they see Trump, who sounds different. Tonally, he sounds different. Tonally, he's scaring the shit out of people. But if you're trying to tell me that this is four-dimensional chess, and in his game of four-dimensional chess, Trump is for all intents and purposes fulfilling the wish list of the most hawkish of neoconservatives and the most plutocrats of plutocrats, then yeah, I think it's nonsense. Does it need to be a psyop? No, it doesn't need to be a psyop. It is perfectly just within the incentives itself of having enough people giving eyes and giving attention to this particular phenomena and this particular thing, that the person who's posting these particular things would love the fact that people are giving their attention to something that he's doing that he started off purely, probably, as a scam. I think it's a scam. I think it's nonsense. I don't think it's a psyop or anything else. I don't add Susie Dawson and Elizabeth Voss does amazing work looking at the Snowden files, looking at the WikiLeaks documents, actually going into information of people who risk themselves. One guy's living in fucking Russia, and the other guy is in a prison in the UK and has been there for 6 years. These people had information that they were actually giving to the world that the quote-unquote deep state didn't want people to see. And the consequences for those things was essentially banishment. And you could say, for all intents and purposes, prison. QAnon is giving you nothing that wasn't already in the news or in the media, or at the very least somewhere where you can get your fingertips on. And again, it boils down to, what is Donald Trump doing? And is what he's doing actually four-dimensional chess? And if that quote-unquote four-dimensional chess game is fulfilling all of the fantasies of the most hawkish neocons and the most rabid of plutocrats, then it's nonsense that Donald Trump is somehow working in the interests of the American public. He is not. And if somebody, some political, religious, thread, the thread of all, is telling you something otherwise, I will be extraordinarily skeptical. I don't particularly care what you listen to or what you read. If you want to read QAnon, fair enough. Read QAnon. If you want to find something into it in the same way people find something into Genesis or something, have at it. Fair enough. But let's not pretend that what's taking place here is this amazing fucking revelation to the world. It is not. It is some guy writing a bunch of posts that you interpret stuff into, talking about some kind of support of Donald Trump, even when Donald Trump is doing things that are the antithesis of what he got elected on. You're being scammed. You're being scammed. So, and that's the other thing, Tim Floberg, you're right. Q. If I'm being honest, this sounds petty, but I'm annoyed by the fact that he uses the name Q. Use any other name. Use P, Z, I. Don't taint Q from Star Trek. Of all of this is the one that annoyed me the most. An all-seeing being. This being that is omnipotent. And his name having excrement rubbed on it by associating it with QAnon, who's writing gibberish to a bunch of people who are looking for something to believe in. Hey, how about this? What about believing in yourself? What about that? I understand looking for something, but what about looking towards yourself? Not necessarily looking for some savior, not necessarily looking for somebody to give you something that you already fundamentally know. And I know I say this, I'm actually recounting the news. You're not going to find this stuff externally. That's all I'm saying. This is an eternal process. This is not this guy who's in the belly of the beast who's trying to save your life. Be skeptical. I've never changed from that point. Be skeptical. If you can't even see who the person is, why on earth would you believe him? So, Trekkers unite. That's fucking right. All right, I'm going to keep this one short. Yeah, what did you say? 2 thumbs up, 8 thumbs down. Yeah, there are going to be people who dislike it. But it's true! You're being had! You're being had. I'm sorry. You're being had. You're being utterly scammed. And I understand why. I get this idea of wanting for something to believe in. I get it. What's his name? Bob Ramirez always jokes me talking about him looking for Santa's claws. But there's some person in the shadows that's feeding you limericks, and you take those limericks and find something about it, and you look at Donald Trump, and you believe that this man who says comical things, who has the English language latitude of a 3rd grader, and knows nothing about politics at all, and you believe that this guy is in there battling the plutocrats, even though he himself is a plutocrat and supposedly a billionaire, and the only thing that he's done in that office is to advance right-wing causes. But I'm supposed to believe that the advancement of those uber right-wing, ultra right-wing causes are somehow Donald Trump's 4-dimensional chess. Nonsense. Utter and complete nonsense. I don't believe it. There needs to be something else. You have to have something else other than 4-dimensional chess to get across this idea that there's something there. I don't think there's a there. I think they're being had. I don't even think it's a psyop. I don't even give it that level of credibility or clout. People are looking for things to believe in. In the same way that you had Democrats looking to believe this Russian nonsense because their paradigm of the world didn't necessarily take Hillary Clinton losing to reality show hosts, you have a bunch of people who are looking to reality show hosts to beat back what they consider to be a rapacious political system. And I hate to tell you that that reality show host is part of that rapacious political system. And you're being convinced that what he's doing is to your benefit. It's like somebody stealing your money and then trying to convince you that them stealing your money was the best thing for you. It is not. I don't believe it. So I would leave it here. Let's see what the audience. I'm curious what the audience is saying on this. Lift the Veil, the YouTube channel, has been best for me at breaking all this stuff down. I hear you. QAnon saying insider information, big news this week in DC is like HA saying Hillary indictment imminent. Hillary indictment imminent. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, what is QAnon? Yeah, it's like supposedly people start talking about him on my channel, and it's like, hey, there's this deep state insider with information. Okay, what's the information? And you read it, and they're like, come on. Donald Trump. Bah! battling the deep state. He's punching the deep state in the nose. And come on. Come on. All of these things are explained just by the factors to which they find themselves. Meaning, when you see Donald Trump at reality shows, goes out doing things to try to advance a huge amount of money for plutocrats, what you're seeing is a plutocrat advancing a huge amount of money for himself that's going to be awesome tax breaks for himself and his cronies and the people that got him elected. That's not four-dimensional chess. That's a right-wing agenda that they wanted to get placed for Donald Trump. When you see Donald Trump trying to take out healthcare, that's not four-dimensional chess. That is Donald Trump trying to get rid of healthcare because he made a campaign promise saying he was going to destroy healthcare. When Paul Ryan, or not Paul Ryan, when these other guys end up, the Republicans, try to get rid of Social Security and Medicare, that is not the deep state. When they're passing that tax cut, when they're destroying environmental regulations, those are not deep state. That is a Republican pushing through a Republican agenda. And just because he sounds gross and over the top, doesn't mean he's different. Donald Trump is just a conventional Republican. I hate to tell you this. If Mike Pence was in that office, Mike Pence would be just doing the same thing. He would be more bitter towards the gays, but he would be doing fundamentally the same thing. If a person was battling the deep state, you would think that they would be doing something other than what the deep state would be wanting them to do. And by that, I'm making the distinction between somewhat of a Pence and a Trump. And I'm making a point that there is no distinction. There isn't one. With the exception that Pence would be worse. Sorry, this is off topic, dude. Love Mikhail Tal as well. Yes, I love Mikhail Tal too. It was so weird to see Dora and Kasparov in the same sense. Fuck yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, for anybody that plays chess, they won't necessarily get this. But it's so bizarre. It's so fucking bizarre. Like, so, love Dora to death. Like, one of my favorite channels. And then you have one of my favorite chess players. And in your head, these are in two different boxes. Like, I know Garry Kasparov gets into politics every so often, but to me, that's in Russia. That's not in the United States. I don't know what Garry Kasparov has to do with politics in the United States. And then I see Jimmy Dore and Garry Kasparov there together, and they're like going at each other, and I'm like, oh, this is odd. This is odd. I don't know how to process this. And then I hear what they're talking about, and it's like, oh, Garry. Oh, Garry. Just because there's certain things that take place in Russia doesn't excuse the things that take place in the United States. Yeah, it was weird seeing those two together. It was very weird. I agree with you. I agree with you. Absolutely. Dore checkmated him. Yeah, Dore checkmated him because Garry Kasparov's perspective is off. It's almost like being in a hell dimension and then finding yourself in the United States. Well, from the standpoint of a hell dimension, the United States may look fucking awesome. It doesn't mean there aren't problems in the United States. There is no utopia. There is nowhere to go in that sense. It's going to get you utopia. You only can get better. But better doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't killing a lot of people around the globe. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are being put into cages, whether you're talking about immigrants or whether you're talking about people who decide to smoke pot. So yeah, Garry Kasparov trying to give a pass to the United States because of the failures of Russia is a fail. It's a fail. Utter fail. Fisher was a great chess player too, but was super paranoid and anti-Semitic. Matthew B. Squire, yes, Fisher was weird with the anti-Semitism thing. He was way over the top with that stuff. And the older that he got, the more off he got. He became strange and he was off. There was something wrong with Fisher. Let's be honest. There was no way Fisher was rap tight, especially when you get towards the end of his life. But could he play chess? Oh my God. He had a breathtakingly simple way of playing that is amazing to play behind. Absolutely amazing. Holland St. Clair, he made a great point about where our immediate concerns, or do we have the higher ground? I don't fully understand that one. Jamal, how long would it take for a TV news zombie to be politically awoke after discovering YouTube progressives? They would think we're nuts. They would think we're nuts. You know, me saying President Obama was paying terrorists in order to undermine the Syrian government is perfectly true. And yet, it would bug the shit out of them to hear that statement. Look at Jake Tapper's response. And yet, I guess at this point, it's known. I mean, I don't even think it's guessed at this point or contested. He made a great point about where we are not, where our immediate, do we have the higher ground? I don't think we have the higher ground. We're murdering people. And the goal is not necessarily to have the higher ground. So, I'll end this here. I wasn't going to keep this one long. I just saw the QAnon thing, and I don't even know how many people know the QAnon thing. But But this is so bizarre. I mean, the QAnon thing is so bizarre. I'm going to slice this video to cut off the chest part. So if you see it and be like, hey, that video seems shorter, that's probably why. But I will end this here. Thank you guys for showing up. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. And Matthew B Squad, thank you very much, man. I appreciate your help. It always helps. You guys have a good one. And